people feel free to start. Thanks, Kim. Yeah. So first of all, it's a big thank you all to coming today, because I just know, in conversations I've had over the last few weeks, the pressure everybody's under in the care sector with the pandemic and staffing and recruit, making sure you've got the cover for the work you need to do. So first of all, thank you all very much for giving an hour of your time to be with us today. That is really appreciated. And of course, if you have to go, anything crops up, or if you don't find it interesting, that's fine. Just come and go as you please. Really, we're thank you for actually coming. So that's the first thing. So I just wanted to do a quick bit of introduction to the event, because this is the first of a series actually of 11 little 1 hour sort of sessions, and I wanted to explain that a bit to you. I mean, the first thing I want to say though is how important care homes are, and this idea of care homes as a beautiful garden, because pre-COVID, wasn't it, pre-pandemic, often the media, whenever they covered care homes, they were always pointing out the things that were going wrong in care homes. It's always like the stuff, and you see it now in learning disabilities, don't you? The stuff that's going on in the media, and they say how terrible people are treated. But I know, and all the research says, that care homes are wonderful places, and there's so much good work that goes on in them, so much love, so much compassion, so much skill, and so much wisdom, really. And that's what we really want to celebrate. So we really want to celebrate care homes, celebrate the good that they do, and hopefully through the next few weeks enrich those, add something to them, and see if we can help make them contribute to the care that they give. So we're also very sensitive that we need to pay particular care of people at the moment because of the emotional labour that people have been through in care homes over the last few months. So we're hoping a lot of the events, we want them to be helpful, we want them to be appreciative, and we invite you, if you're struggling with any of the things, or any things you find interesting and you want to know more about, come back to us. So we'll be led by you on this. It's not like a training session where we're trying to impose things on people. We're trying to look at things that we hope might be of help to you. And if they're not, that's fine. But if they are, we want to support you. So that's so each of the sessions that are going to come up, this is just an introductory session. They're all little taster sessions, and that's really important to get across. After each session, you should be given something, an idea or a concept or something practical to have a go at. And we're keen to support you with that. So the very last session, is focusing on, well, you've listened to all this stuff, and you might have liked some of it and you might not have liked some of it. Which of it do you want to take forward? So we're really hoping that you'll, even if you dip in, that you might come to the last session and say, well, I found that really helpful, I want to do something around that, and we'll see what we can do to help you. So the sessions, they all follow a particular structure. They're all 1 hour. We're definitely keeping them to an hour, and quite bite-sized, and they start with a presentation. So we've got different speakers each week who are going to share something they hope that's of use to you, and they'll share that in the form of a presentation. Then you'll be put into little groups of 5. I think it's really important for people to talk about things that they've seen, whether they like them or dislike them, or what they think they can get from them. So people will be put into little bake-out sessions. And then after that, they'll come back and we'll have a bit of a chat around what do you make of all that. And then the very last 5 minutes of each session, we're hoping that's okay. Last 5 minutes of each session, we're going to do a little evaluation, and there's a little link that's going to go in the chat. And if you've got the time, we'd like you to fill that in. So that's that. The first session, this session, is really setting the scene, and there are 2 things we wanted to share with you this afternoon. The first is a bit of the policy context, because a lot of this it's not just come out of thin air. There's a lot of work, and for all the ups and downs of government, Welsh Government really are committed to supporting care homes, and particularly dementia. There's a big move to support dementia, people living with dementia and the people who work with them. So we thought it was really important to share that with you. We've got Michaela Morris from Public Health Wales Improvement Cymru, who's going to share the scene from the dementia standards. And then we've got Cicero, lovely Cicero from Social Care Wales, who's going to talk about the Good Work Framework, which is the overarching framework for dementia learning and development in Wales. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about something we call the DEEP approach, which is a particular approach to learning and development. And so that's the sessions today. Is that okay? So we're just setting the scene today. And so I'm going to first of all hand over to Michaela, who's going to just set the scene in terms of the dementia standards in Wales. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Michaela. I'll mute myself now.
You're muted at the moment, Michaela.
Oh, it's not just us, right? Somebody else put it up. We have no sound.
Yeah, there's no sound, Michaela. If we can't do it, no. Do we hand over to Beck to do standards? If Beck can set the whole.
Right, this will be the not so detailed version, as Michaela is the standards guru. So apologies for that. But yeah, I guess just the important thing to share really is I'm not sure how many people are aware, and we will send around some links and everything afterwards to give you a bit more detail and overview. But in April of this year, Welsh Government launched the dementia pathway of standards, and I'm not sure how many people have seen these or been made aware of these, but these were an extensive piece of work by Improvement Cymru with people working in social care, in health, people living with dementia and their carers, to try and give a bit of a structure to what dementia care and standards of what dementia care needs to look like in Wales. Michaela, are you coming in? Sorry there, could you sound for a second? Nope. All right, it's just some in and out sound. So there are a set of 20 standards that cover the whole sort of aspect of dementia care and what good dementia care needs to look like across Wales, and they're underpinned by values of kindness and understanding really as the driving force to set the scene for those sort of 20 standards. While Michaela's there on the chat, maybe she can put a link into the document which details all of those 20 dementia care standards, and they cover from your basic starting point of working with your communities to understand what good looks like around here and what good dementia care looks like, through all sorts of settings across health and social care, and all parts of a person's journey, person living with dementia's journey through care as well. So that will include things such as memory assessment and experiences of being in inpatient care and in hospitals, around having named connectors to link to a person and support them through their journey, and all the way through to sort of the learning and development opportunities as well, made available to people working with people living with dementia and carers as well, recognising the need to support them with skills and understanding about what works while living with people, working with people living with dementia. So it's not, I don't know if Michaela's managed to put them in the chat there, but if you sort of Michaela will put a link in there that details each of those 20 standards, and they were designed in a way that brings in everyone in a person's journey, recognizing this isn't a health thing, this isn't a clinical thing, this is about the experience of the person, and those underpinning principles really of person-centered care and rights and everything that goes with that, about that consistency of care and journey for the person. So they were launched in April of this year, and we're now working with each of the regions across Wales on what we're calling an implementation year, really, to help them to ready themselves to start delivering really against those standards. So we've got a number of national working groups doing that, which report back to Welsh Government. There is, as ever, an invite for anyone who is particularly interested in any of those areas to speak to us and join us in any of the working groups that we do. We're very keen and work collaboratively and co-productively on looking at what works for you as care homes and part of the sector as well, what works for you and what would be meaningful for you, and involving you in the development phase, not simply dropping a bunch of standards on everyone and saying this is how you do it. It is about really is about bringing people together to work on them. So you'll see in the chat there, if you want a little look at the sort of document, the details, them all. Yeah, I think we need about an hour to go into detail on each of those. So hopefully at least that will make you aware that they're there, aware that they've been launched, and that there's an offer there to work with us in the development and to feed in what will work for you and what can be done to particularly support you as care homes against those standards. I don't think there's anything that wouldn't resonate in what you're already doing in terms of person-centered practice and really putting people at the heart of what you do. But hopefully it gives a bit of a nice structure and framework and links things together for you as a region and with other partners to all work together to achieving those standards as well. Michaela will put her email address in the chat as well about joining any of the work streams, if that would be good for people. So sorry, it's not a very detailed overview, as Michaela's much more of the detailed person around.
Fantastic, you did a great job there. Oh my gosh, I couldn't have done that. Yeah. So well done, yeah. Do you want to go on to the good work?
Yeah, so the reason I'm here today is to introduce everyone really who hasn't seen it to the good work framework. Now that might be familiar to some of you, so apologies if it is, but I wanted to give you really the basics of what that framework is and what drives it, and why it's there, and what we can do and what we're continuing to do really nationally to try and help people to use that framework and to undertake, you know, achieve some of those sort of learning outcomes in the framework. Now, the Good Work Framework was launched, I think it's about 5 years ago now, and it's a learning and development framework for dementia across health and social care. So for those of you who've seen it, it's quite a detailed framework with a number of learning outcomes in it, which cover, you know, sort of a broad range of dementia skills. What I really wanted to highlight with people is what underpins it and why it's relevant, because I think sometimes you can see big documents, look at it and think, wow, that's complicated, but really I wanted to tell you a bit of what's at the heart of it before you went on to have a look at it as well. So the framework itself is underpinned by what we call the 3 E's, which is ethics, excellence and engagement. So the ethics is really about compassionate practice, and I think hopefully that's everything that resonates with everyone here on the call anyway, but looking at how we can really drive compassionate practice in dementia care as opposed to clinical practice. Well, there are needs for clinical skills, but not to be, you know, overridden and driven by a medical or clinical model. It's about our compassion and how we care for people. The excellence bit is around competent practice. So the framework itself lists a number of different learning outcomes and skills and domains really of learning that help sort of upskill the workforce around working well with people living with dementia. And the last bit around engagement is around your approach to learning and development and wise practice. If your workforce, if you as workers aren't engaged with their learning, aren't engaged with what those learning outcomes or skills are, and they look like something cold on a piece of paper that just mean nothing, then you're not going to have a good experience and a good, you know, a workforce that is able to absorb that learning really and enjoy that learning and really sort of resonate heart and soul with what it is. So the engagement part really looks at the approaches to learning, which is where this series of workshop comes in as well. It doesn't all have to be classroom. There are different ways that we can learn and different ways we can support staff to learn that doesn't feel quite so onerous and quite so learning-y and is a little bit more enjoyable for the workforce. There are 3 levels as well to the framework, just so people are aware. From they're called the informed skill and influencer level. So the framework itself is chunked up into those 3 levels. The informed level is sort of more awareness, understanding around dementia and supporting people living with dementia. And then the skilled level covers a lot more of some of the more specific skills that you may need perhaps if you're in different roles, or perhaps if you support a person living with dementia more day to day than someone who may not have such frequent contact with a person living with dementia. And the influencer level, is really important, because it's about really feeding down and influencing that practice and those environments in which we practice to make it a positive learning environment, and an environment that understands the importance of supporting a person while living with dementia. And all of this is underpinned by the senses framework, which I'm sure a number of you will be familiar with as well. I know Nick has sort of been able to deliver some separate workshop on the senses framework, but it's that feeling of belonging, purpose, everything that's covered in the senses framework that really drives the good work learning and development framework as well. I'll be sending people after just a little worksheet with sort of links to all this stuff in, so that you've got it to have a look at and see what and make sure you've got links to things that are available as well. Nationally, we're here to support you if you're looking to implement parts of that framework as well. So you'll get my contact details around. I'll put them in the chat, but we have various tools and other things that can help you look at what you currently have in terms of learning opportunities and map them in a quite simple way against that framework, to give you a bit of a check of where you are in it and see if there are any opportunities for further activity you may do. And that's where we're here to help. So if there's any gaps or any things that may potentially you're looking for, may potentially be missing, then please do come to us, and hopefully we'll be able to help as well. But a lot of this, like I said, over these series of workshops, should give you some nice sort of little activities around learning and learning opportunities and ways of thinking about how to deliver them more creatively, that may sort of feel a lot easier to do than at the moment. It's quite difficult with training and other things, and learning is not just in a classroom. So I hope that you'll find the whole series really helpful for you. It is there to give you some practical ideas, but if there's anything missing, do please contact us and let us know how we can support you as well.
That's lovely. Thank you, Beck. I noticed there's quite a bit in the comments about the senses framework, so I'm just going to introduce a bit about what we call the deep approach to learning and development. And basically it started with sometimes some of our experience about training. Training is often something that's done to people, or they're sent on training, and it's sort of, and it means well, and there's a place for it. Like if you want to learn a particular technical skill or something, you want to go on training, and so I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but often some of the most effective learning that people get is the sort of everyday stuff of talking and thinking together. And staff often don't get time to do that. They don't get a chance to talk with one another, share stories with one another, and learn. Oh, sorry, let me just turn the phone off.
I just put a link in the chat for everyone as well, to just a little poster that explains the senses framework as well, if anyone wasn't familiar with it.
Thank you. Yeah, so sorry, my phone never goes off, but of course it has to go off then. So the senses framework is important because it came out of work in care homes years ago by a man called Mike Nolan, and also in hospitals. And what he said is sometimes there is a drive, especially when you're working with older people with high support needs, to focus on their physical needs. And he found that actually there's obviously much more, and you all know that, there's much more to the care and support of older people than just meeting physical needs. And basically the senses framework says what we really need to create in older people is a sense of security, so they feel safe, and both emotionally in terms of who they are as well as physically, that they have a sense of continuity. So stuff in their life in the care home has some connection with their life in the past, that they have to have a sense of belonging, they feel a part of things, they have a sense of purpose. sense of achievement, and most importantly, and this is where care homes are brilliant in this, is to give people a sense of significance, that they matter just because of who they are as people. And that's a precious skill that care workers have in affirming people. But what Mike found in his research is that those same senses are just as important for the staff. So where's the staff sense of security? And COVID's shown that, hasn't it? Where are we making staff feel safe? Where's their sense of continuity when policies change or people and things are happening in the home? How do we get this continuity in their lives? And definitely, how do you create a team? How do you create belonging? So all of those things, and significance, that people matter, not because they're a care worker, they matter because of who they are. So Mike's work is all around how do we create the senses, not only for residents, but we want to create it for staff, and we want to create it for families who come in as well. How do we create sort of continuity for them? Perhaps a family carer who's no longer caring for their mother. How do we give them some kind of continuity? So that sort of stuff. So, and it underpins the deep approach. And the first session next week is all about the senses framework. So again, I'd encourage as many of you as you can to come. We've got a speaker from Scotland who works with care homes in Scotland, my home Scotland, who's doing a lot of work around how do we create the senses in care settings. So that's the first session next week. So anyway, just quickly, I wanted to talk a bit about the deep approach, because that's what this series of workshops is framed upon. So I'm going to start with a couple of slides, if that's okay. This is where I go terribly wrong and I can't find my slides, but hopefully I can. Slides. Is that showing up? Everyone see that?
Yeah.
Great. So the picture in the middle, it's a dementia care home. It's a lovely dementia care home, isn't it? It's in the Netherlands. I can never pronounce it. It's Hoogweg or something. It's obviously you need to be Dutch to pronounce it properly. But it's a really interesting care home because it's one where they've actually looked at the evidence from research, but they also listen to the evidence that comes from people living with dementia and the people and family carers and the staff, and they bring all these different types of evidence together. So as you can see here, it creates what we call this enriched environment of care. And so that's a picture from this dementia care home. So the Developing Evidence Enriched Practice approach to learning is, and try to say in a nutshell, it's not trying to train staff or tell staff what to think or tell staff what to do. It's a way of valuing and appreciating what they do, starting with the good that's in everyone and everything, and then building on that. And we do a lot of it through storytelling and through talking and thinking together. And that's we've got a bit of a metaphor to try and explain it, because people say, what do you mean by the deep approach? The idea of this word evidence, sometimes that people get frightened by that. They think, oh, it means I've got to follow research. I'm not techie. I don't want to do. But actually, we use a very broad definition of evidence, and we say it is what research says. So research can tell us some really interesting things about care homes, but so can the residents and their lived experience. And that's so important in context. It's no matter what they're saying in the Netherlands, what are they saying here in Pershore, for example? What's the evidence from the residents in my care? What's the evidence from the staff? Staff have loads of wisdom, and many staff have worked years in settings, and they've developed a whole range of skills and knowledge, and that's evidence, and we want to learn from that. And also managers, they know what all the policy things are and the procedures and the regulations. They've got their own type of knowledge, and we like to say, well, they're all different sorts of knowledge, but we can share them and learn together. So that's basically what the deep approach is about. It's around valuing everybody's knowledge and saying, how can we use that knowledge collectively to make the world a better place? So this idea of making the world a better place, not using evidence because we're supposed to do it or because the Good Work Framework says we should do it. We want to make a beautiful garden of a care home, and if evidence can help us with that, then that's great. Let's bring it on. Let's look at the evidence, and that's the sort of approach. The way we get across, and this series of seminars, you'll see that there's 9 of them, and they're broken down into little 3 clusters. There's the first 3 are about one thing. I'll go into it in a minute. Then there's another cluster of 3, and then there's another cluster of 3, and I'll go through that when I've finished. So the deep approach, we say there are 3 key. You can take a gardening metaphor. How do you create a beautiful garden? You know, how do you get this lovely picture that you've got here? And we think there are 3 stages to it, really, and that's how the seminar series is structured. So the first is you've got to prepare the ground. So if you've got a dementia or any care home, really, you've got a care home, the most important thing is to create the right environment for people to learn. If staff feel stressed, if the staff feel unloved, if staff haven't got time to think, then that's no good, is it? We need to somehow, if we want people to engage in learning, we've got to create an environment where those senses we talked about earlier are achieved, where staff feel that they have a sense of belonging, they feel appreciated because of who they are. So the first 3 talks we've got about are all around how do we create the right environment for learning. So we're not sending people on training, we're trying to create a learning environment. So the learning environment isn't the classroom, it's the care home. The care home is the classroom. And so the first speaker we've got, Tamsin McBride, is going to talk about the senses. How do we create the senses? The second person, Kath MacDonald from Queen, she's actually based in Edinburgh, in Queen Margaret University. She's been working with nurses around during lockdown and getting them to support their own emotional well-being because of all the stuff that's been going on with COVID, and how they can tell their story and how they can share their stories with one another and support one another through storytelling. So that second session is around how do we support staff well-being through storytelling, which will be interesting. And then the third one is Edelle Roddy, who's did some lovely work with My Home Life Scotland, and she's around how do we create relationships in care homes? How do we learn about each other? How do the staff get to learn about the residents? How do the residents get to learn about the staff? So you can see in our first 3 series, we've got these about creating that lovely, what we call an enriched environment of care, and then which is itself an enriched environment of learning. So the first 3 around that. The second part of DEEP, or the Developing Evidence Enriched Practice, is gathering, like a garden, you want to gather lots of seeds. You don't want like just one, unless you're really mad on hollyhocks, you might have a bed of hollyhocks, but most gardens have got lots of different flowers in, haven't they? And that's what makes a garden beautiful. And so it is with knowledge. We need different types of knowledge. So we need knowledge from research, that's really interesting, what it can be. And we've got knowledge from residents, and we've got knowledge from staff and families. So the next 3 in the seminar series are looking at how do we gather this knowledge? How do we find out what matters to our residents, for example, what's going on with our residents? And Susie Webster from My Home Life Cymru and Age Cymru is going to talk about some work they've been doing during lockdown, where they've been getting stories from the residents about their experiences of COVID and how they've presented those to share them with people and as something to learn from. And then we've got I should remember, I should have all this written down, didn't I? We've got Andrea Tales from Swansea University. She's a dementia researcher, and she's come across lots of interesting research, but she's going to present some that she thinks will be of particular interest to care homes, and she wants to share and talk with you. And then we've got another, it's terrible, the person will shoot me if I can't remember, but we've got another workshop, again around gathering, it's Izzy Latham from Worcester University. They've been working with care homes around instead of having researchers come in and start doing research in care homes, they said, well, care homes can do their own research and they can research things that matter to them, things that matter to the staff, things that matter to the residents and families. So they've been doing what they call, they use this word, sounds a bit jargony, action research project, but with care homes, where care homes identify the questions they want to explore. And so she's going to be sharing about that. So that's the middle series. The last 3, once you've got your seeds, you need to sow and grow them. So you've got your seeds, you've got your nice soil, and then you want to sow the seeds. And the last 3 series are around this: how do we tend and nurture the growing? How do we talk and learn together? So, for example, we've got Sue Lyle and Catherine Poulter are going to talk about a way of using cartoons and provocative statements to explore risk in dementia care. And so that'll be really interesting. But the idea is you don't tell people this is what you must do. You say, oh, what do you think about this? I think about something differently. Do you? And the idea is it's helping people to talk and think together, not to judge or criticize one another, but to learn from one another. And especially when you disagree, we think it's really good indeed when people don't agree. So if staff don't agree with their manager, that's not a problem. That's a place for learning, isn't it? So it's very much around that. And then we've got I'm conscious of the time, but we've got 2 more talks. The other talks, and I'm running out of memory now. We've got 2 other talks, and they're all around this talking and thinking together, really. Oh, we got a Gabriel Eisteller. Now that's an interesting guy, because he has this, you want a bit of jargon, he does this stuff called social pedagogy, but it's lovely. It's around a really caring, kind, approach to learning that builds on everyone's knowledge. And he does a lot of work with children's homes around shared learning, where the staff and residents learn together. And he wants to share what he's learned from working in children's homes and see whether that might be applicable to care homes. So that's the series, really. I'm going to finish there. I just wanted to share a magic moment, because one of the things we've been doing, one of the most important things about DEEP is storytelling. We think this is really important, and we're doing, if you're interested in storytelling, then do let me know. But when we did some work a few years ago, research, we found there were some really important messages from research that about what mattered most to older people with high support needs. And of course, they're a bit dry, they're a bit boring, really. They're not boring, they're really important, but they're written like bullet points or challenges. But what we found is when we shared these messages with staff, this is frontline care staff, they brought them to life because they gave us stories that actually illustrated what the research was trying to get across. The research in itself goes in one, it makes sense, but it doesn't touch the heart. But what we found is the staff are brilliant at putting colour onto things that matter and stories. So I'll give you one example before I finish, and I shall do it now. There's a little link there as well if you want the Magic Moments book, which shows you if you want to get good evidence across, get the staff to put them into stories for you. So I'm going to stop sharing there. So just quickly, one of the research messages, you have to see the person behind the label. You know, sometimes when we work with older people, you often see the disability or the dementia, whatever. And we shared this with care staff in care homes, and one frontline worker gave us this lovely story which illustrated. And what we find is when you share that story with other staff, they can get the story much better than they can get the bullet point or the PowerPoint presentation. So here's the story. There's more to me than meets the eye. I was taking one of our residents somewhere in the car, and we began to talk about her life. I know this resident had never been married, and I'd made assumptions about her past life as a spinster. I was therefore shocked and amused when she said to me, well, I may have spent most of my life on the shelf, but that doesn't mean I was never taken down and dusted from time to time. This made me laugh and challenged my misconception of older people. So it's a lovely story, isn't it? We've got loads of stories that care home staff have provided, and they are brilliant talking points for getting learning and thinking together. So we're going to hand over now. So we've got 2 questions for you. We're going to put you into little groups of 5. And I think at the end, I've got the questions here, so I'll read them out to you. And Kim's hopefully going to put them in the chat box for you. So the first question is, it's around this idea of what we want you to talk about is how not being sent off on training. There's a place for that, like, so we're not being critical, but we want to know, what are the opportunities for you on the job in your practice to learn and think together? So the first question is, what are your current opportunities for learning together on the job? You know, just do you get a chance to talk? Do you get a chance to think, share ideas and talk about things and learn that way, rather than be trained, but learn as a team? And then the second question is, what are the challenges to learning together on the job, and what support might you need to overcome them? So Kim's kindly put those in the chat, and she's going to pop you now in for about 15 to 20 minutes. Is it 15 minutes or 20 minutes, Kim? Should we go for 15?
15 minutes, yeah.
15 minutes, is that all right? So if you go into the breakout rooms for 15 minutes and consider those 2 questions, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you very much.